Prynhawn pawb. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping... Oh, here he is. I am so pleased. It gives me great pleasure and huge pride to introduce our First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, who will be familiar to many of you. He's been First Minister since 2018. His quiet, thoughtful, yet strong leadership has really stood us in Wales in such good stead through the COVID pandemic, and a big contrast to what's been going on here in Westminster. So without further ado, because I know you've all waited to hear from our First Minister, over to you, Mark. Diolch yn fawr.
Catherine, diolch yn fawr, gwrando i chi gyd. Thank you very much for your patience in waiting while we managed to get connected. I'm going to talk briefly now on two subjects which I think are very much connected. How Labour wins elections and how we secure the future of the United Kingdom. And indeed, for me, the two things are absolutely inescapably linked, because the United Kingdom is at greater peril today than at any time in my political lifetime. And it is my very strong contention that only Labour can save the Union. So in Wales, we're very fortunate. We have some experience of winning elections. In fact, in November last year, we reached a milestone of having won the majority of seats for Labour in every general election since 1922. We have been in power continuously since 1999 at the Senedd, and in our election in May of 2021, we took the largest share of the vote we have in any election since the start of devolution. How do we manage to do that? Well, there are many things I could suggest to you, but I think at the core of it is the fact that the offer we make to people in Wales is one which they recognise as being authentically Labour. A relationship in which we speak with a voice that people in Wales recognise as being a Labour voice. That the policies we advance are very clearly rooted in authentic Labour values, and that the vision we offer for the future of Wales is one rooted in that sense of Labour authenticity. The good news is that my prescription for the future of the United Kingdom, I think, does exactly the same thing. It draws on four different strands of solidarity. And what it tries to do is to develop a compelling case for being a member of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom cannot survive on the basis that people and nations within it are dragooned into membership, denied an exit route if that's what they choose. You're in the United Kingdom because you have no choice. That's never going to sustain the United Kingdom. What we have to do is create a compelling case that people in England, in Wales, in Scotland, and to that different way in Northern Ireland would wish to be a member of such a union. So here are my four solidarities that I think together make up that case. First of all is the basic solidarity of welfare. In every one of my solidarities, I will argue that since 1979, the neoliberal project has undermined the things that make people feel the United Kingdom is worth having. I believe the people in this country do not want to see people in sickness, in old age, at a time when they are without work, living on an income that simply is insufficient to survive. We have, as a party, to commit ourselves to a revived, modernised, reformed, of course, but a revived welfare state in which people know that if they fall into misfortune, the strength of the common provision around them will be sufficient to sustain them through those difficulties. And we need a different form of welfare. We need a form of welfare that recognises that having left the European Union, we're uniquely the only country of our sort that has yet to recover a workforce of the size that we had available to us before the pandemic. We need a welfare system that helps people to be in the workplace, not denying them benefits the minute they get a job and so on, and a welfare system sufficient to allow people to be able to meet their everyday needs. In Wales, we have the largest universal basic income pilot that has probably ever been mounted. Every single young person leaving care in Wales over a 2-year period, and there'll be hundreds of them, are being offered a basic income based on the real living wage, which is sufficient to allow them to put their lives on a secure footing for the future. It's that sort of approach that I have in my mind at the heart of the idea of a solidarity of welfare. My second strand is a solidarity around those lifeline services that none of us can manage without. The 1945 Labour government said to people that to be a citizen of the United Kingdom gave you a stake in those lifeline services: gas, electricity, water, transport, and certainly, I would argue today, access to the internet and other electronic means of communication. The sell-off of those lifeline services, the pursuit of profit in the way they are organized, alienates people from the country to which they belong. We as a party, we have to be bold enough to say that we will reassert the public interest in those things that people cannot manage without. Now, again, in Wales, we are fortunate. Our water company, Dŵr Cymru, Welsh Water, is a mutual. It is a not-for-profit distribution company. Its reputation as a result amongst its users is the highest of any water company in England and Wales, because every pound that it creates, it reinvests in making sure that those services are available for Welsh citizens. I am not arguing for 1945 style nationalisation. I am arguing for a reassertion of the public interest through new ways of doing that, so that citizens of the United Kingdom know that by being a citizen, you have a stake in making sure that every other citizen has access to services they simply cannot manage without. Here's my third one, and that's the solidarity of enabled citizens. Citizens with rights, human rights, environmental rights, consumer rights, rights in the workplace. The revocation of EU retained law bill, currently in front of the House of Commons, is a full frontal assault on the rights that we currently enjoy by being members of the United Kingdom. The Labour Party, I believe, in order to convince people that the United Kingdom is somewhere to which they would choose to belong, must reassert the fact that as a government, we will make sure that those rights that we enjoy will go on being part of what we get from being part of this club. And every time the Tories erode those rights, it lessens the case for the United Kingdom. Finally then, to the solidarity of a fair constitutional settlement. And here we are very fortunate to have the report of Gordon Brown as a blueprint for a way in which we can create a devolved United Kingdom in which the parliaments of the different parts of the United Kingdom are guaranteed to be able to do the jobs that they are elected to do on behalf of their local populations. That set of protected statutes that the Brown Report talks about, that will mean the Tories would never be in a position to do what we have seen since 2019, which would entrench devolution and find new ways through a reformed House of Lords to knit the different parts of the United Kingdom together again for the common purposes that we think we are better off discharging together. I just want to add one strand which isn't there in Gordon's report because he wasn't asked to address it. And it's linked for me fundamentally to a fair constitutional settlement, and that is a fair voting system for the future. I said to you that Labour has voted consistently for Labour for 100 years. In the first 30 years after 1945, half of those years returned a Labour government and half of those years returned a Tory government. In other words, if you voted Labour in Wales, you had a fighting chance that you would get a Labour government at Westminster. In the last 40 years, that bargain has simply broken down. Wales has voted Labour in every single election since 1979. And in 30 of the 40 years, we have had a Tory government. Now, that simply corrodes people's confidence that their vote has any meaning, that they have, as I say, a fighting chance of a government of the sort that they would prefer. We have to reform the voting system to make sure that it does not go on delivering time after time after time Conservative governments on a minority of the votes that are cast. Those four forms of solidarity, I believe, speak to authentic Labour values. They provide a recipe that makes the United Kingdom somewhere which its citizens would wish to belong to, and I think provide a winning recipe both for our country and for our party.
Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr, Mark. That was fantastic. Some really good topics there for questions. I'm going to take a couple of questions. I know we're running a bit late, but we've got one here. So the man in the blue jumper right there, and the woman in the red jacket at the back. So would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Mark. So I'm Jack, and I was previously the organiser for RCT Labour, and I just want to say that in the Rondaf especially, we were so happy to have you at the head of our ticket, and you are immense support in getting Buffy elected and Leanne unseated, and I honestly think that the respect and the applause you're getting here is extremely well deserved, because the people in Rhondda Labour, in the Rondaf, sorry. Mark,
do you have a question?
I will ask a question, sorry. Mark, so I really love what you're saying about, constitutional reform and whatever, but in the valleys and whatnot, one of the big issues is that feeling of being left behind, particularly in regards to investment and whatnot. So I'm just wondering, what do you think, say, the Welsh government or the UK government could be doing? Because, in Scotland, we all know how it went and whatnot.
Okay, so we'll just take the second question there, and then Mark, if you can answer both at one go, that would be great.
Hi, Mark. Jay Morton, architect, but also previous parliamentary candidate for a very unwinnable, which was Chichester. My question is about messaging and our right-wing media. I think we all find on the doorstep the challenge to cut the message through what's coming through the newspapers and our sort of majority media system, and obviously that's not going to change anytime soon. So how do we cut through that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed. Jack, thank you for what you said about the Rhondda. It was a remarkable result for Labour in our election. We overturned a majority of 6,000 by the former leader of Black Cymru, a very, very well-known figure. I was in the Rhondda the day before polling, and honestly, it was like a revivalist meeting. People were telling each other as we went down the street that we were coming, and people didn't have to knock the door. People were coming out on the doorstep to tell you that they were going to vote Labour. People in the Rhondda feel left behind, Jack, because in many ways they have been left behind. And they've been left behind, as I say, because of the recipe that 40 years of neoliberalism has imposed upon them. 40 years in which the things that made them feel they had a stake, that they weren't left behind, that they were part of what it meant to be in the United Kingdom, those things have been progressively severed. To be an unemployed person in the Rhondda is to manage today on a smaller share of average incomes than at any time since the 1930s. It is no wonder you feel left behind, because the Tory recipe has done exactly that. And let's be clear, it has done it deliberately. That is not some unintended consequence or something they were forced to do. The disciplining effect of having some people whose lives are so difficult that you point to them and say, behave yourself or you'll end up like that, is absolutely at the core of the way the neoliberal agenda moves forward. And we can reverse that. We can reverse that doing some of the things I've talked about today, but in many other ways as well. Jane, we are up against a ferocious right-wing media who will do anything they can to prevent a Labour government. I sometimes used to joke about what the headline in the Daily Express would be if Boris Johnson had announced slaughter of the firstborn. And I think it was something like, "Good news for second children," says Boris. Because there is just nothing that they will do that they will not support, and there's nothing we will do that they will not criticise. Our huge advantage, certainly true in Wales, is we are the only party who are able to put people out on the doorstep, having conversations with people in every single part of Wales. And the ground war in the next general election will be absolutely crucial. I don't think people simply swallow what the right-wing media tell them, because they see the gap between what they're told and what actually happens. But we have to be there, talking to people, listening to people, never taking a single vote for granted. And through those, on the day, on the job, on the doorstep conversations, I think that is our best way and our biggest weapon we have as a party to counteract what people hear otherwise.
Thank you so much, First Minister. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm now handing over to Andy. Huge thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it was brilliant to hear from Mark. Managed to make the tech work, and what a contentful Fabian speech to finish off with those really clear principles, but also rooted in social justice and equality that we all yearn for. Thank you, Catherine, for your chairing of the session. I didn't say at the start that Catherine is our parliamentary candidate in Monmouthshire, so go and campaign for her as well as the other... as well as the other fantastic parliamentary candidates we've heard from over the course of the day. It's been a pleasure to share this Saturday with you, both those online and those in the room. The time's flown by, actually. It feels like it was only just now that we were hearing from Rachel. This has been a huge effort from the Fabian staff team and volunteers to put on, and I'm incredibly grateful to all of them for the support that they provided both today and in the weeks and months beforehand. It's a team effort, of course, but there's one particular person I want to thank who's really made today happen over the last few weeks, and that's my colleague Rory O'Brien. Would you give him a huge round of applause? There'll be plenty more Fabian events and publications over the course of 2023. If you've managed to get this far through the day and not joined the Fabian Society, now is your chance. We would also, if you are in a position to give a little bit more to the Fabians, we'd really welcome an extra donation. But with that, I'd like to say, on behalf of the Fabians, a huge thank you to our EU-wide partner, FEPS, for their support and the international dimension to our conversation today. So from FEPS and the Fabian Society, a really warm thanks for you today. And if you want to stay on for a few minutes afterwards, we've told you that we'll be going to a pub around the corner. Hope to see you there. Thank you.